Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Cardboard Kitchen. Um, so today, tonight, this evening, whatever, I'm going to talk about a couple of different things. Give my opinions on some stuff. I recently watched a video. I believe it was by Magic Historian. So if you guys watch my stuff, definitely go watch Magic Historian. You know, whatever. Go watch some of his more recent videos. In one of those videos, he talks about the catastrophe of what happened at the recent Magic Con event that happened this past weekend. Definitely go give that a watch. Just kind of wanted to, I did watch a recent video that he did. That kind of got me thinking, and I've been talking with a buddy or two for a few hours, maybe an hour, about a couple of different things. Made me realize I kind of probably needed to put down my opinions in video format. Maybe some of you will agree with me, maybe some of you won't. You know, it is what it is. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, first off, I want to say, I believe it was the Magic Historian video that I watched earlier today, but I'm not sure. But I heard somewhere or saw somewhere that the average age of the current Magic the Gathering player is around the age of 30, if not older. And the current time frame that those people, as far as newer players are concerned, the current time frame for which a newer player sticks with the game is about a month. And I find that funny. I find that very odd and very unique in its own way. And essentially what that tells me is all of these Magic crossover IPs and stuff that they're doing, you know, Lord of the Rings, Doctor Who, Fallout, Final Fantasy, all that stuff that they're doing that stuff to try and attract people from those fan bases into the game. But that's not gonna, I personally believe that the way that they're doing it isn't going to keep those players, those people into playing the game. They're literally just going to show up, get the stuff that they want, maybe stick around a little longer than normal to get as much of it as they want, and then they're going to split. Which is why the average time length now is about a month and not any longer than that. I remember when I started playing Magic 24 years ago, the average age of a Magic player, at least one that played competitively, was 15, 16 years old. And they would stick with the competitive scene for at least 3 years, roughly 3 years, before they would even consider selling their stuff or moving to a different format or whatever the case was. And now, you've got newer players who they're coming in, they're around 30 or older. They're coming in, they're there for like a month buying all this stuff. And then, once they got the stuff that they want, they're gone. Like they don't buy any more of the product. They don't do this, they don't do that. And I really feel like a lot of that has to do with what's happening with Wizards of the Coast and the products that they're pushing. They're promoting and pushing a lot of snatch and grab stuff. And what is unique about snatch and grab stuff, this is Cardboard Kitchen, so we're going to probably equate this to food in some way. Snatch and grab stuff is great as a snack type food or a quick fill your stomach type food like a bag of pretzels or something like that. If you've got a few extra minutes, maybe it's a bowl of instant potatoes, whatever the case is. But your players that have stuck it out, that are still being essentially your loyal customers, your loyal player base, that are trying to stick with it as best they can, you assume that they're going to be there forever. They won't. If you continue to promote snatch and grab products, your little snack on this, snack on that products, they're going to get tired of it. A number of them are already tired of it, myself included, and I don't play competitive. I pretty much only play Commander now. So I don't have to grab nearly as much, nearly as often. So, like, maybe Wizards, I understand Wizards, you're under the rule of Hasbro, and you're like the only thing Hasbro has right now that's potentially making them any money. So I understand you're probably under a ton of pressure to make certain things happen. Personal opinion, you as a company need to take a hard look at what you can truly do for the longevity of the company, to what products are good, what products you need to stop with, what products you have planned in the works that you haven't come out with yet that maybe you need to cancel. And I'm talking about the longevity of your company as Wizards of the Coast. Personal opinion, if you can get from under the rule of Hasbro, there are a lot of changes you can implement that don't have to fall under some special thing Hasbro has you doing, in order to get you to where you could be back to the company you used to be. Because honestly, I feel like you're not doing it. At least in the Magic the Gathering department. I got a decent number of friends that play Dungeons and Dragons. You know, there was a huge debacle, fiasco on that a year or two ago that you don't hear about it anymore, but I know a lot of people are still a bit butthurt about what happened. So, you know, I'm going to try and offer some opinions about products that you can produce at the rates that I feel you should produce them, to kind of get back to having a more consistent customer base picking up your stuff. Because I'll be perfectly honest, if the distributors are refusing to do restock purchases on products from stores, then clearly your product is not selling as well as you think it is. Because distributors are refusing to put it back in their inventory and restock it and try to resell it to some other customer. They're just flat out, if you bought too much, that's on you as a company and you deal with it. Whereas before, distributors didn't have an issue with doing something like that. They were like, "Oh, you bought too much? Sure, we'll buy it back from you, but this is only how much we're going to give you," kind of deal. These local game stores, you're killing them with some of these products. Like, pre-release events might be good, release events might be good, but some of these products beyond those two events, they're not doing so well as a product. If anybody's listening to this, watching this, and you want a little more information than what I'm giving you, I definitely recommend you go check out Magic Historian. He's got a lot more in-depth stuff on what's going on with a lot of that product situation. He's got a lot more in-depth stuff as to what happened at the Magic Con event over this past weekend. And personal opinion as to why he's got a lot of information with that he covers, that I feel if that happens again, not necessarily if it continues to happen, but just if it happens a second time, Wizards, you're not going to see huge turnouts at those Magic Con events or whatever they are, whatever you promote, whatever the case is. based on what the Magic historian was saying happened at the event. First off, I don't know why anybody would pay $800 for a ticket, but whatever. If that were to happen, like if an event like that were to come to my local area, or close enough to my local area where I could attend, and ticket prices were what they were for the Magic Con, and assuming I could afford to go, and I bought one of those pretty expensive tickets, and I went, and anything like what was described in the Magic Historian's video happened to me, I guarantee you I would be on some platform giving you a bad review, trying to get in touch with somebody, trying to get a full refund. I would not be happy. I 100% would not be happy. I wouldn't be happy with what happened with the so-called on-demand events. I wouldn't be happy with the, being told with what some of those people were told as far as, the different levels that they purchased as far as their tickets are concerned. I wouldn't be happy with any of it. And as a Commander player, I sure as tootin', rootin' tootin' shootin', would not be happy with what happened with the Commander section of events. If I paid for a ticket and it covered, the Commander section to go play in the Commander section or whatever all weekend for free, and then what happened at the actual event were to happen, well, I guarantee you I'm getting my money back. I'm getting my money back and I'm leaving. And if I was like some of those people and, had, gone X amount of miles and had to get a hotel room for the whole weekend or whatever, I'd be doing what a lot of those people are planning on doing, which is planning on talking to their credit card companies and getting chargebacks on their hotel rooms. Typically, especially if you're staying in a lower end hotel, typically you're not going to have a great experience at the hotel to begin with. But then to also pay the amount of money that those people were paying, to be at that event, to be able to experience all that kind of stuff, and then have to deal with everything they dealt with, 100%, somebody is going to know that I am unhappy. Somebody is going to feel the mental anguish of the fact that I am unhappy. And some way, somehow, I'm getting my money back. Just no excuse for some of the stuff that happened. That being said, as I mentioned a little earlier on in the video, I've been talking with a buddy for a little while, like an hour or so. And personal opinion, if you can go back to, I'm not, first off, one of the issues that I feel that you have is you're doing too many crossovers. You're doing too many crossover, whatever, the crossover with Assassin's Creed's coming up, the crossover with Fallout will be here in a couple of weeks. You did a crossover with Lord of the Rings, and you did a crossover with Doctor Who. You did a crossover with Warhammer. I'm not saying you're picking bad IPs to do crossovers with. I think some of those are great. I personally am not a huge fan of Fallout, but I know people that are. I was at one point an advocate for the Assassin's Creed series. At least the very first game that followed Altair. I felt that the first game there was a decent game for what it was in its time frame. I felt that it explored unique avenues that could in fact be true in real life. And I felt that it also opened up a whole new potential way of how you could build games, world building in games and things of that nature. and a way to explore various things within games. And I thought that was great. And then everybody loved Ezio. Everybody loved Ezio. I didn't like Ezio. I tried the second Assassin's Creed game that came out, and that was where it started with Ezio, and Ezio had a number of games in his following. And I'll be perfectly honest, I never really got through the tutorial portion of that second game for Assassin's Creed that was the start of Ezio, because I didn't like Ezio as a character. 100%, I just didn't like Ezio as a character. So I'm kind of a coin toss on the Assassin's Creed stuff, the crossover that they're doing. Some of the stuff looks interesting. Probably not going to buy it. Just saying right now, probably not going to buy it. But I'm digressing heavily. I believe, Wizards, that you are putting out way too many products to begin with, but you're doing way too much stuff. Like, you're doing crossover products that are coming out, like you're doing 2 or 3 or 4 crossover products a year now. I feel like that's too many. Those products are also getting a varied array of things, like 2 of your crossover products. One was just Commander decks, one was Commander decks, and then some Secret Lair stuff. One was Commander decks, and then a Modern Legal set. You're designing, you're making products in such a varied way that when you're putting them out, I don't think it's hitting the market the way you want it to hit the market, or the way you're hoping it to hit the market. Now, don't get me wrong, Wizards, you're probably still seeing a big return on your investment for the products. But it's not having the overall hopeful effect on your player base, I believe. Yeah, again, personal opinion. First, I really feel like if we could go back to one Commander product a year being specifically the Commander decks, I think that would be a big positive move that would help a lot, predominantly because you could have one team that spends all their time designing that. Like, that's all that team does, is design that particular product that releases once a year. Instead of a Commander product with every set, or whenever you're doing a crossover, some kind of crossover thing, that thing's also getting a Commander product, or whatever the case is. I think going back to one Commander product a year is probably going to be a big positive change that you could go back to. I also believe that you could continue with the crossover stuff, but coincide that with the Commander decks. Like, since the Commander product is going to be a once a year, if you were to take my advice and go back to a once a year Commander product, you could still do your crossovers and just implement your Commander deck product that's a once a year thing with your crossover once a year thing, and have both of those coincide together, and then you're effectively killing 2 birds with one stone. And while you're at it, you can use your crossover to implement new mechanics, because now you have to figure out how to make that crossover work in the MTG universe. But you can also use that as a way to bring back older mechanics that don't get a whole lot of love. Like, one of the mechanics that they recently brought back, and it's only on like a handful of cards, if that, is Clash. Clash was an old Lorwyn mechanic that I loved it. I loved it as a mechanic. 100% loved it. It's only on like one or two cards in one commander deck out of the Murders at Karlov Manor product. So like it's not making a huge return, but it was a mechanic that I really liked when it originally came out. And I feel like it would be. I feel like in some ways it would still be a good mechanic even today in the stuff that we have access to today. So like you can still do your crossovers, just cut way back on your crossovers. Don't do your crossovers like you're doing your secret lairs, which is something every flipping week. Seriously, that is ridiculous to have a secret lair drop of some kind every single week. You don't need one. You don't need to do one. Also, that's what's hurting most of your other sales. A lot of times your secret lair products have stuff that people are looking for, and they know that really the only way to get it is to buy it directly from you. The secret lair stuff, that's probably the biggest product, at least one of the biggest products. I got a small handful of things of products that I believe have been hurting gaming stores, local gaming stores, since they were in concept, before they ever hit shelves, just as soon as they became a concept. And secret lairs are one of those things. Now, when secret lairs started, it wasn't a terrible idea, because it was like, hey, here's a special artwork on a really old card that we don't plan on reprinting in any kind of sets at any point in the future. But here's this special limited run product where we're going to put it in here. Okay, fine. That's understandable. Doing a secret lair drop once a year, if you had maintained what you were doing in the secret lairs, would also be understandable. Not what you're doing. Not what you're doing. No, absolutely not. Too many, what was it, last year or the year before, the average secret lair drop broke down to one secret lair every week, with, I believe, a 36-hour window to purchase it. So no, Wizards, you need to stop with the secret lairs. Slow your roll on it. Cut them back down to once a year. Something. Personal opinion, do away with it. I really think the secret lair products has hurt the local gaming stores, which was the biggest, best way you had to promote your products. Because that's kind of how a lot of people played, is they would go into a local game store, they would find a group of people to play with, and they would essentially get involved in a community of players. And that's kind of how that kind of stuff grew, because most of those players would also, word of mouth tell their friends that weren't involved about it, get them involved in some way, whatever the case is. And that's how the communities would grow and build and be what they were, and be as good and great as they were. And with Wizards of the Coast selling specialized product directly to players, I think that's the biggest thing that you've done, Wizards, in recent years that have hurt local game stores. Because now the players don't even have to go to their local game store to get the product. I think secret lairs would be, first, you need to cut back on them. Second, you need to cut back on what you're doing. Some of this stuff I'm not okay with. The coin flip commander deck that you put in a secret lair, I wasn't particularly okay with it. The other secret lair that you did that was a commander deck that was 50% of the cards were foil and the other 50% of the cards weren't foil, I'm not okay with that. If you're gonna do a product like that, you need to make sure all the cards are foil or all the cards are non-foil, not a 50-50 on the product. I personally don't agree with that being a thing, especially since Wizards of the Coast, every time a new set comes out, you seem to change your foiling process, and it seems to always get worse. That's another thing you probably need to fix in your quality production stuff. Uh, I feel like the secret lair stuff could be useful as a product, could be a very involved product if you cut heavily back on how often you release them. And when I say heavily, I mean a once a year deal, not this every week nonsense. And on top of that, you make it so that the only people who can order the secret lair products from you are local game stores, local businesses. Make it so that those are the only ones that can purchase the product from you, and then those places can sell those products to their players, instead of just every player from here, here to the high waters or whatever, being able to purchase it from you, and the local game stores who also purchase it, well, their player base already has it because they were able to purchase it from you too. So that was a big thing that I didn't like, was the fact that you started selling stuff directly to players when you probably shouldn't have, because that is the biggest thing that has killed local game stores. Is now as a player, 9 out of 10 times you can just pay attention to whatever's coming out in a secret lair, and you as a player can buy it directly from Wizards of the Coast, and then you can get, you might have to buy a full super drop, whatever that is. It's usually like 5 or 6 different ones to get all the stuff that you want. But I mean, you can buy it directly from Wizards now, instead of going online to all the different websites for all the different stores and stuff, or going to individual stores and trying to see if they've got the product, which is not something that I agree with. I really don't feel like Wizards should be doing that. If Wizards are going to do something like that, they need to sell the secret lair product directly to the stores, and then the stores sell to the player base. And then something else that I feel that Wizards has done in recent years that has killed some of the local game stores is, I can understand making a premium product for your premium collectors, the people that are willing to pay the higher price to get the better product. However, you should not in any way, and I think this is something that has hurt the game a lot too. I know a number of players who just want to collect the entire set. And that's what they want to collect, is the entire set. And I think the biggest thing that hurt them being able to do that as collectors is when you make it so that only certain cards from a set show up in a specific product from that set. When there are only certain cards or certain variations of cards that show up in a specific product from a set that has 3, 4, 5, whatever number of products associated with it, that's going to hurt your average Joe Schmo collector from being able to collect anything, because more than likely you're throwing it in that expensive piece of product. And they're like, well, I don't want to pay that price for that product just to try and get this card. Now, granted, they can buy that card individually, but what if that card's 4 or 5 times what it would cost them to buy the product itself? Well, they're left with their options, which is buy the card individually, be guaranteed they get it. Maybe it's going to cost X amount more than what they're wanting to pay. Maybe it's not, whatever the case is, or buy the product. Well, here's the other thing. Some of those products have heavy limited runs, and stores, local game stores, can't get extras in. I remember that when I used to work for a local game store, out here where I'm at, the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty stuff came in. Everybody at our store was hyped for it. Well, there were specific variations of certain cards that you could only get in the collector's boosters. And a lot of people didn't like that because they were looking for some of those cards that they could only get in those specific versions in the collector boosters. We sold out on pre-release day at opening within 2 hours because we put a limit on it. Within 2 hours of opening, we sold out of every collector booster and collector booster pack that we were able to get in on pre-release weekend within 2 hours. And that's with us putting a limit on it. And the limit was 12 packs, which is all you could get in a single collector booster. And we sold out of every single one. Well, it took us almost a month to get that restocked in. Well, most of our player base by that point had either purchased the individual cards or traded for them or whatever the case was and went elsewhere and got the product. So we lost out on our player base that didn't have it, that was looking for it because they went elsewhere to get it. And then, I mean, we still had the product and we still managed to sell out our second rebuild of it. But at the same time, the product would have stayed. Those collector boxes would have stayed or moved not quite as fast if they hadn't had some of those specific cards in, like, only in that variation. I feel like if you're going to do a set and then you're going to make it so it's like, oh, these are the cards in the set. Well, those cards should be available to open in every variation that you put them, because some of these sets have had 7 different versions of some of these cards, except for the Teferi set. I think the core, whatever core set they did that was all about Teferi, I think that set had 11 different Teferis with slightly different artworks. That's all it was. It was 11 versions of the same card with slightly different artworks. And when I say slightly, I truly mean slightly. You would have to put them side by side in a panoramic view to be able to see how slight those differences are. So when certain versions of that are locked into only a collector booster, or only in the draft booster, or only in, whatever the booster is, when stuff like that's locked into specific pieces of product for a set, it makes it harder for your average customer to come in and pick up those products and be able to be willing to purchase those products to get those things. So I feel like that's not something you should be doing. If you're making a set, you should not be locking specific cards, specific versions of cards that are truly in the set into specific products from that set. Whether that set's got 3 different products and one of those is a collector booster, a play booster, and a commander deck, something else I'm not really okay with, since you're doing commander decks by set now instead of once a year. I could understand it at once a year because it makes sense at once a year, but when you're doing commander decks with every darn tootin' set out, it doesn't make sense for this to happen. Putting commander cards that are from the set, legal in the set, but you can only get them in the commander decks. Not okay with it. Not okay with it one bit. You did that in Kaldheim, I think it was. There were cards in the Kaldheim commander decks that were considered part of the set that were, to the best of my knowledge, were standard legal, that were locked into the commander decks that you could only get in the Kaldheim commander decks. And I wasn't okay with that. I really wasn't okay with that. Those cards had borderless versions or extended, I think it was extended art versions that you could get in the collector boosters. But otherwise, they were locked to specifically the Commander Deck product. I wasn't okay with that. I'm still not okay with that. Kaldheim's been 2 or 3 years in the past, and I'm still big no. So, you know, as far as products are concerned, Wizards, if you're going to make a set, don't lock specific cards or specific variations of cards into a specific product for a set, especially if you're making multiple products for a set. Don't lock a specific card in the set to the buy a box promo. The big one for a lot of players, if assuming you're still playing and you've been playing since, that can remember it, was Nexus of Fate. Standard legal card was technically part of the set. The only way to get Nexus of Fate was to buy an entire box from your local game store, because it was the buy a box promo. It was the only way to get it. It was the only way to open it. It was the only way to have them. If you wanted to play set, you either found somebody who had bought a bunch of boxes and got them, or you bought 4 boxes and got them. If you found somebody who already had them, who already had a play set, you could probably buy individual versions. But if you couldn't find anybody that had those, you were basically going to buy 4 boxes to get 4 of them. And that was a hefty price tag that a lot of people didn't like. Don't lock cards when you build a set. Don't lock specific cards in the set that are legal in the set, that are legal to the formats that are being played, to specific locations within your products of that set. Don't lock cards into your buy a box promo. Don't lock cards into only being able to open them in the collector boosters. Don't lock cards into only being able to get them in the commander decks that come with the set. Don't lock them into only being able to open them in play boosters or draft boosters or the set boosters or whatever the case is. If you're going to build a set and you're going to make it so it's like, these are all the cards in the set, well, those cards need to be available in every product. Not locked to one product, or if you're going to lock it to one product, everything is locked to that product. If you're going to lock, since you're doing play boosters now, if you build a set and you do it with play boosters, every card in that set needs to be locked in to play boosters. If you do collector boosters along with that, the only thing that the players should be paying for is the fact that every card in a collector booster should be shiny. Because every version of a card that comes in a collector booster should be available. Granted, it should be available at a lower pull rate, but it should be available in the play booster. Personal opinion. Personal opinion that I believe would probably help your company a ton. Do Commander products at once a year the way they were back in 2011, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, all the way up until roughly Kaldheim, because I think Kaldheim was where they started doing it with every set. You want to continue to do crossovers? All right, coincide your crossovers with your once-a-year Commander product. Because, and when I say Commander product, I mean Commander decks. I don't mean a Commander set. I really think that everything had a better impact when it was strictly the Commander decks and not a set that players could draft and do all this or that or the other. Again, keep in mind, everybody, these are my opinions. But I've been playing the game for 24 years. I've watched Wizards go up and down. I stuck through it during the original Kamigawa time frame, which is where 90? I want to say 90% of the player base they had at that time frame basically up and left because they didn't like the original Kamigawa run. And they weren't huge fans of the original Mirrodin, which came before that. So those two things coinciding, like they lost. And when I say when I'm trying to crunch the numbers in my head. So I'm estimating about 90% of their player base left. And the reason I estimate about 90% of their player base left is because at my local game store at the time, I was one of 3 people that would show up to play in events during that time frame. And I actually liked the abilities that they had in the original Kamigawa run. I enjoyed some of that stuff. Kind of wish they had brought it back with when we came back to Kamigawa, but they didn't, and it's okay. It's what it is. You know, the stuff that we had in our return to Kamigawa worked for what they were shooting for in that time frame. But I've seen a rise and fall once or twice of Wizards of the Coast when it comes to your products, your how you're building your sets and all that kind of stuff. So I really feel like if you do once a year Commander decks again, if you want to continue doing crossover IPs and you at a regulatory rate, you can coincide your crossover. You can do 1 crossover a year, I feel, because then you're not pushing the envelope and you're not trying to bring people to and fro every month, and you're not having the huge, like, ooh, this month we have a whole bunch of influx, and then the next month you have a whole bunch of outflux because the product that you made for the month prior was a product that a lot of people liked, and they were only there for that product, and then once that product was gone, they were gone. Once a year Commander decks, let's go back to that. It gives your build team, your research development team, or whatever, like I was saying, you can put one team, you can dedicate one team out of all of your available resources at Wizards of the Coast to just building a once a year Commander deck product. Because doing that, they have enough time to flush out the stuff that they want to do. They have enough time to come up with themes if they're trying to do stuff based on themes. They have enough time to come out with, doing the research and development people being able to play test it, being able to play test those things with each other, and being able to figure out the power levels or whatever the case is. Just all that kind of stuff. And just being, I feel like it would be a better product if it went back to a once a year thing and you had a dedicated team where that's all they did was build those products, build the Commander decks that would come out once a year. If they wanted to build those, if you wanted them to work with another team that worked on incorporating a crossover that you were doing, make that your once a year crossover that is also your once a year Commander decks. At that point, you've got 2 teams working together to make a great product that's going to be able to bring in mechanics that fit both the theme of the crossover that you're doing along with the universe that is the multiverse that is MTG. And at the same time, you could probably include some older mechanics from older MTG sets in that product that fit for whatever the crossover is. I feel like that's something that you could also do that would help make the product better. We don't need a Commander product every time a new set comes out. We don't need a crossover every month, 2 months, whatever the rate is right now. We don't need all this extra, you're trying to do Universes Beyond. All right, cool. Limit it to once a year. Just limit it to once a year. You've got so many products coming out so much that I personally believe that your resources for building these worlds, building these products is so thinly split that none of these products can be as good as they truly could be if you put limitations on yourself as a company to how often you come out with specific products. Commander is probably your most played format as a company as far as the game of Magic the Gathering is concerned. But Commander gets assistance with every set because when you're building sets for Standard to be incorporated into the multiverse, Commander gets to pull from that. Modern also gets to pull from that. So Modern, like, building all these extra, like, Modern specific sets, Standard specific sets, Commander specific sets, Commander specific decks, like pre-built decks. That's something else. You went away with the starter decks that come with the individual sets for Magic, as far as like things that came out for your standard rotation. And I feel like maybe that wasn't such a great idea, especially if you're trying to get newer players into the game, because now they don't have a true starting place to start from, because 9 times out of 10 what happens is they don't have somewhere to really start from, because it's you go online, you figure out what kind of deck you want to play, you buy the singles for that deck, and then you just play that deck. They don't really have a good starting point to go from as far as the new player's concerned. So what happens is they usually get booted into Commander, because Commander has a product they can start with, which is a Commander deck. And then they can build from there. You can, you got play groups that play on a consistent regulatory basis. I don't know of any store, except maybe one. I think there's one, and it's like an hour and a half away from where I am, that plays Standard, that fires the Standard tournament on a regular basis. An in-store Standard tournament on a regular basis. Your Standard format, Wizards of the Coast, is predominantly on MTG Arena, and a lot of your older players, since apparently your demographic is now 30 plus years old, aren't big fans of that, because we're not going out and getting the same social interaction for Standard as we get for Commander. Lots of places do Commander nights where people can show up and play Commander. There are some stores that I believe do Commander nights that don't even sell Wizards of the Coast product. They just understand that players need a place to play, and they're just like, oh, we have an MTG Commander night. We've got snacks, we've got drinks, we sell some of this other stuff. They're not necessarily not selling Wizards of the Coast products. They're probably just not selling specifically Magic the Gathering products. But I can think of 1 or 2 stores, at least close to where I am, that don't necessarily sell MTG products that still offer a Commander night, because players need a place to play. And some of these stores are just too far to get to. Some of the stores that cater to Magic the Gathering players are now too far between. Last year or the year before, the place that I was, the local game store that I was working for, people would all the time be like, I'm thinking about opening up a game store. I'd be like, don't do it. I would flat out tell them, don't do it. There are too many, like, you're looking at opening something close to where you are, because 1, it's a job that you can do, and 2, you need something closer. You're wanting something closer to home than, your current work. And I've flat out told these people, don't do it, because there are too many similar hobby stores around. And when I say there are too many similar hobby stores around, we had 7, not including us. I believe there were 7 within a 45-minute drive from where I'm located. Like where I'm at, I believe there are 7 different stores that I could go to that were hobby related to card games, or comics, or models and or figures that you would build and things like that you could go to get stuff from. And a lot of these stores had a lot of the same products, so they were all usually charging about the same price regardless of where you went. So that being said, anytime someone piped up and was like, hey, I'm planning on opening up a store, I'd flat out tell them, like, don't do it. Unless you're going to be out somewhere that's close for a large enough group to come to you, don't do it. Because if you're going to do it in, the area that I am, or some of these other areas, if you're going to do it in some of these other areas that are heavily populated with, like, yes, there are a lot of people, but there are enough game stores going, there are enough local game stores going around that none of these game stores are crowded or flooded to an extent that you couldn't walk in the door and be able to get to whatever you wanted for whatever reason. Don't do it, because you're not going to have what would be considered a consistent customer base. You're going to have what it's going to be is your customer base is going to include the customer base of all these other stores. And some of these customers from some of these other stores, if they go into your store and they see something and they hear about a special price or a special deal, more than likely, they'll go back to the store that they frequent the most, where the owners or whoever know them as a loyal customer the best. And that customer will probably say something, and they'll get it for that same price. If that price is cheaper. Otherwise, if that price is more expensive, they don't have to say anything. They're not going to say anything, because the store that they frequent the most already has it at the best price. So, Wizards, stop with all of the excess products. Stop with all of the excess locking of specific cards in a set to specifically your higher end products, or your commander decks, or whatever the case is. Or your buy box promos. Stop with all the secret layers. Lower your secret layer count to, if you want to keep doing secret layer stuff, lower your secret layer count to once a year. Again, you could have a dedicated team just working on secret layers. You could have a dedicated, with all the resources you have, instead of having X number of teams spread across X to the Y degree products, you could just have X products, and then you've got one team for each product. You could have a team that works strictly on your standard sets. Only works on your standard sets. Now, granted, that team has to be moving at a faster pace, because your old rule, and I don't think it's sticking with that, was that you would put out basically one standard set every 3 months, basically once a quarter. But one of those standard sets was a core set, which was supposed to be a starting point for newer players. Well, as I've stated, newer players, as far as standard or modern or legacy or vintage is concerned, depending on their level of income, level of disposable income is what I should say, is going to affect where they can start. You don't really have products that allow those players to get into those formats easily. Most of those players who are going to be trying to get into those formats easily are probably, when they go to local game stores, and they go to the however many local game stores are in their area, and they start asking questions, and they start doing this or they start doing that, they're going to realize real quick that the best place for them to start, because you have a product for it, you have a good starting product for it, that you just kind of need to dial it back on. If you go back to a once-a-year thing, you could make the once-a-year commander decks, you could make them back down to $35. $34.99 is what they used to be. They were still decent. They were still good. They were still playable. And you could still make them a good product. You could have one team dedicated to just that. And it would be a good product. And it would probably you would probably see, over a long-term run, you would probably see a greater influx of stable income from your customer base, because you would be putting out a good enough product on a regular enough basis that your customer base or player base could afford to purchase it, which means The local game stores could afford to purchase it from the distributors, who in turn could afford to purchase it from you, because of the fact that it's a stable enough product to move. Over time, it will depreciate in value, but it will still move. All this product that you're putting out now, it feels like it's a high-end product that depreciates the moment you talk about it, and you have to move it as you're talking about it, because once you're done talking about it, nobody wants it. And frankly, that's a bad kind of product to make. If you're any company, if you're making a product like that, you don't need to be making that kind of product. You need to be willing, as a company, you need to be willing to put a little more time and effort into making sure the product is stable enough to last a long time. It might move a little slower. It might cost you a little more up front as a company to pay for resources required to make the product that way. But ultimately, it would be a better product overall. It would be a stable product overall. And it would move at a consistent rate. It would continue to move longer than you expect it to. And that's something that I really feel Wizards needs to go back to doing, because right now, Wizards, the products you're making, they are snatch and grab products, and they are basically snacks. We as Magic players, sure, snacks are great, but we don't need snacks. What we need is those full 10-course products that are good, that are stable, that are going to fill us up and have us last until you can put out the next 10-course product, the 10-course meal product, which happens in 3 or 4 months down the road. We don't need this. I got a snack now. 2 days later, I'm going to have to buy another snack, because whatever the case is. Because ultimately what happens is your player base that truly cares. Let me reiterate this. Your player base that truly cares and wants to see your game go on for a long time is a player base that ultimately understands at some point we have to stop eating the snacks and we have to start eating the full meals, because that's the only way we as a player are going to survive as a player long enough to make it to the next meal. And putting out all these little snack products, it's not going to cut it. At some point, your player base is going to get tired of buying all the snacks, and they're going to go to a game. They're going to switch over to whatever game has products that are basically a meal that put them out on a regulatory basis that's good enough so that they can afford these meals. Because right now, you're putting out snacks that are costing as much, if not more, than a meal. And we can't afford, we as your player base cannot afford snacks that are costing us more than entire meals when you're producing the snacks and the meals. Like, we can't buy your snacks if your snacks cost more than your meals, and your meals come out every 2 or 3 months, but your snacks come out every week. Can't happen. It's an unsustainable ecosystem, essentially. Eventually, your player base will die off if you don't fix something. Believe it or not, most of your player base right now probably is dying off. I heard recently from multiple sources that a lot of the older players, a lot of the older Magic collectors, players, and whatnot, they're at a point now where they're not caring about Wizards of the Coast anymore. They're selling off everything they have that's Magic the Gathering related, because what you're doing to Magic the Gathering is not good. It's just not good. It's not viable. It's not sustainable. They don't like it, and they're showing issue with it by getting rid of any products that they have that you've produced. And what's really sad about that is Another content creator said it. I know MTG historians said it. But a big issue is a lot of these local game stores that do sell your MTG related product, they're getting to a point where they're not doing that anymore. So here's what essentially the world is saying, Wizards, is that they are slowly saying, we don't want this product because your player base doesn't want to purchase it. I'm offering you guys at Wizards what I believe are good solutions to some of the issues you are seeing, if you're even seeing any of them. That's another thing. I don't know how well some of you guys at Wizards of the Coast pay attention to your player base enough. But like, if you're even seeing any issues, I'm trying to offer you guys solutions to some of this stuff. As I said in one of my other videos, if anybody from Wizards of the Coast wants to contact me and ask for my opinions, ask for my advice, ask for this, for that, or the other, if you want to bring me in as a consultant on some of the sets that you're building and the worlds that you're building, you're free to contact me. The easiest way is obviously to leave a comment, but I don't know. I could probably leave my email in there somewhere that somebody could reach out to me, or whatever the case is. But somebody from Wizards, if you're watching this, you could contact me. Like, I'm trying to offer up advice and solutions and do all these things because I've been with your game. So here's the thing. I've been with your game for 24 years. Over the course of that 24 years, I've sold out 3 other times in addition to my current process of trying to sell my excess cards. And I've still come back because I enjoy the game enough, or at least I did enjoy the game enough to want to be part of the game and part of the community. Like I said, Wizards, if you're watching, try to get in touch with me. If you want to bring me on as a consultant, if you want somebody to pick my brain, I'm more than willing to offer up something beyond the advice I'm trying to give in these videos. Obviously I'd love to be paid for my consultation, brain picking, whatever the case is. But if you want to bring me on in some kind of an active role, even if it's a behind the scenes role where I can't really talk about it on this channel, that's fine too. That will involve me getting paid in some way, obviously. But I feel like I have enough insight based on what I'm seeing in my area to offer up some of these solutions. And if you were to bring me on to also work with some of your teams and potentially offer up other solutions, not necessarily in the development department for like how cards are made and stuff like that, but as far as like maybe your marketing department or some other department that works on like how often you put out product or what you're wanting to put in the product, try to reach out to me, try to have somebody get in touch with me. Again, the easiest way is obviously to leave a comment on the videos. I try to share the videos on the Facebook page for Cardboard Kitchen, and I try to share the videos with as many people that I know that play Magic the Gathering that I feel would actually be interested in these videos. And I also try to share it with other communities that I'm in that aren't necessarily MTG related, but there are people in those communities that play MTG. So I try to share it within that community and then just hit all the MTG people in that community at once, including the ones that I don't necessarily know. Again, guys, we're coming up towards the end of the video. If you're new here, thank you for sticking it out, because I didn't really address that at the start. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the content and you want to see more content, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. It looks like a little Taco Bell symbol. If you want to be notified the next, in the future, whenever I do more uploads and stuff. I'm slowly adding things to videos in order to try and get caught up with some of this stuff. I really, we are almost to the end of February. I don't even think I'm at 100 subscribers yet, which is kind of sad to see. So I was really shooting for 1,000 subscribers by the end of February, and I originally started doing this stuff in January, but I think the big issue was I had there was about 2.5 weeks where a lot of stuff was really rough here. For me, for my family, and all that stuff. So during that time frame, I didn't really get to do a whole lot as far as making these videos and doing this content and everything. So still shooting for 1,000 subscribers. I'd really love for it to be within the next 3 days. 2 days, 2 to 3 days. Probably not going to happen. Would be great if it did. That being said, maybe we can get 1,000 subscribers by, I'm going to say the end of April. We're going to shoot for the 1,000 subscribers by the end of April. And that'll really allow me to open up and do a few other things. I'm trying to talk with somebody about trying to open up a Patreon for the channel. I'm trying to figure out, one of the things I really want to do for you guys is I want to bring you guys Commander gameplay content. I'm really trying to figure out how that's going to work with the small setup options that I have. I'm currently limited in my space. I do have some cameras that I could put on tripods to shoot the games. But the other thing is having space to set up for, one, having space to be able to set up for a game of that magnitude, and two, having people to be able to play a game with, or multiple games with, depending on what the case is. So there's a lot that I want to do as far as content is concerned for you guys. It's just, for me, it's a matter of figuring out how, and then once I figure out the how, implementing it and getting things set in motion to make it happen. That being said, if you stayed till the end till now, and you're not currently subscribed, and you've been coming back for my videos on a consistent basis, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell, that good old Taco Bell button. We'll be back at some point. At some point, I'll do a video that involves, burritos and rice and, the beans and all that fun stuff. Maybe some shredded chicken, something. We'll probably get into a video at some point that involves pizza and the fact that some people have issues with pineapple on pizza. Whatever. I think that's delicious, but I also think that pickles on pizza is delicious, and that's an oddity. So, that being said, thanks guys for sticking with us till the end. See you in the next one.